Hello, hello, hello. This is Corey on the mic, and this is the Tobis Podcast. And here I have my boy Toby here with me. Toby?
Hey, how you guys doing this week? It's great being here.
Yes. So, a lot has happened since the last time we were here.
A lot.
Last time we were here was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
It's crazy how this election cycle has been so frantic. There's been like 5 major storylines since the last time we met.
Yep.
Can we run down the list?
Okay, so which ones do I remember?
So we ended up at RBG dying.
Yeah.
That was a huge thing.
That was a good.
And then while we were on air, Trump announced Amy Coney Barrett as her replacement.
Yes.
That was another breaking story.
Yes, that was a non-breaking story.
Now, what's happened since then?
Okay, the real big one. Trump got COVID.
Crazy.
That's the real big one.
Crazy.
Number 2, Trump went into the debate.
Yes, presidential debate.
Number 3, Pence also went into the debate.
Yes. Yes. They did.
Number 4, the next debate has basically been canceled.
Canceled. I know.
Number 5. Do you have a number 5?
Number 5, I would say. Debate got canceled. No. So I like to go over it chronologically. So ACB was nominated. Mm-hmm. The debate happened. Mm-hmm. At the debate, huge headline. They asked Trump specifically, do you now denounce white supremacy? Mm-hmm. And he was like, initially he was like, they were asking him, there was a lot going on. There was this weird pause, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Joe Biden was like buttoning, yes. He was like, okay, who do you want me to denounce? That's what he said.
Then Joe Biden said, Proud Boys.
Joe Biden said, Proud Boys. And he said, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. Yo, that in itself was its own headline. The rest of the debate was raucous. I mean, these guys were going at each other. You guys all know what happened. I didn't even have to explain it to you. But that in itself was its own separate headline. Mm-hmm. Trump refuses to disavow white supremacy. So let's take that on first. What do you think is going on with that? The fact that they keep asking him to denounce white supremacy. What do you think is the genesis of that? Because I'll tell you, I feel like a lot of this stuff is fabricated.
No,
a lot of this stuff is generated.
No,
a lot of these headlines are, they're planted by the media. Don't get me wrong, Trump doesn't make it easier either, and Trump makes it easy for them to make these headlines. But I'll just tell you, the source of it was Charlottesville. That was where it all started.
Even before Charlottesville.
You think so?
Yeah.
But Charlottesville was when it really started to. There was this question about Trump's affinity for white supremacy groups. That was the first time. You want to talk about that?
Let me actually kind of like
pull it to you.
Let me actually move back a little bit, because like in 2016, if you remember, I believe it was in October.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton came out and she gave like a huge condemnation of, the alt-rights back then.
Trump supporters. And then she called them deplorables?
No. There was the deplorables comment.
Yes.
And then there was also the alt-right. Alt-right was something totally special.
Okay.
She came out and condemned them and said, there's this white supremacist alt-right group that's linked to Trump. And obviously, as we know since then, except anyone is being disingenuous or dishonest, number one, the alt-right were never any significant bunch of people.
No.
And number 2, since then, no one even talks about the alt-right anymore.
I know.
Today,
I know.
that then is all gone. And then now.
Do you know what they replaced them with? The white supremacists and the Nazis. That's what you hear.
True.
Those are the terms you hear now.
True. And then in 2018, there was the whole Unites the Right rally in Charlottesville.
Yes.
Where the white supremacists came together and there was the lady that was killed, and they were all yelling all those slurs and things like that.
Yes, it was those guys with the tiki
Yes,
torches.
yes, the guys with the ticket torches.
Do you know what group that was? Those guys were a legit white supremacy group, right? They came out, and they came out protesting the takedown of those statues. That was really what it was.
Yes.
Let's try to give people some context for what happened here, because I suspect a lot of people really don't. They hear that Trump was making basically you always hear Trump said there were good people on both sides. That's the comment that got the headline. There were good people on both sides. And when you really go back and look back at really what happened, right? I'm not here to say whether there were good people on both sides or not. I do know that there were bad people on both sides for sure.
Yeah, no one.
You had
Antifa.
You had Antifa,
and then you had the white supremacists, and they clashed with one another.
Well, it's even a little bit more complicated than that. Now, this rally was more than one day, right? It was like a several day rally.
No, it was one day.
It was one day?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had in this group of people, it had to do with statues that they wanted to bring down in North Carolina.
In Virginia, Charlottesville.
Oh, Virginia, Charlottesville. The statues were statues of Confederate generals, right?
Yes, Confederate monuments in downtown Charlottesville.
Downtown Charlottesville. Some people didn't want them to bring down these statues.
Yes.
And some people wanted them to bring it down.
Yes.
It's safe to say that both people had a right to be there.
Yeah, I mean, it's protected free speech.
Protected free speech. Yeah. What would you say about the people that didn't want those statues to be brought down? I guess because the question is, if you consider those people deplorable or white supremacy, I think that's really what we're talking about here, right?
What I would actually say is the white supremacists, in my own opinion, were a subset of people who didn't want the statues to come down.
Yes. Agreed.
They were a subset.
Yes, and that the same way the Antifa people were also a subset of the people that were
protesting against the white supremacists and the whole protest. And a very good.
So there were many groups here.
Yes.
You had the peaceful protesters that were there on both sides.
Yes.
We want the statues. We don't want the statues.
Yes.
That's two groups.
Yes.
You had the white supremacy people that were there with their tiki torches saying, they were saying some really, really, really incendiary stuff.
We don't need to repeat.
We're not going to repeat it on here. Thank you. And then you had the Antifa people that were there. Antifa they're like the militant group on the left.
Anti-fascist, as they call it.
Anti-fascists, they tend to resort to violence a lot of times.
Yeah.
It happens. Like I've heard of all kinds of stuff that they do. And their justification is that they are fighting people that are fascists or Nazis. So this whole place was a mess. And in this whole melee, a girl, I think there was like some kind of conflict during the protest, and this one guy that was on the white supremacy side took a car, drove right into the protesters, and ended up killing this one girl.
Yes.
This white girl. And that right there was a mess. It was a mess. So that's when, of course, there was that controversy. They asked the president, and the president came out and said there were good people on both sides. That's really the source of this.
Yes.
Now they asked him to clarify later on, right? Like after, a day after, and he came out and he said, "Look, I'm not talking about the white supremacists. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazi people. Those people are horrible. They have no place." So he did clarify. But it's been since then that this thing has been really hanging over the president's head. This whole embracing of white supremacy and whatnot.
What I would actually say is there was always an attempt. Okay, don't let me use the word attempt. There has always been talk for a very long time, as far back as the elections of 2016. They're like, he embraces white supremacy. He's a white supremacist, but like, it never totally stuck. Well, the whole incident with the whole Unite the Right rally, and also how he responded with his fine people's comments.
Yes.
Was basically the free ammo he gave out.
It was
to have himself shot.
It felt like he was equivocating, like he was
exactly.
trying to, yes. But what do you think? Do you really think that he was trying to embrace, or he was hesitant to be critical of that side, of the white supremacists?
I'm not going to say he was hesitant to be critical.
And why is that?
I think whether people like Trump or not, people need to understand something about Trump. Part of Trump's whole pitch, his whole campaign is being anti quote unquote political correctness and following all the strictures and all the all the things that are meant to be done.
Yeah.
And for him, it's like for him to always come out and say, I am against white supremacy, I'm against white supremacy.
Yeah.
It's like he is basically telling the system that, look, these are some of the things people must be forced to do, and I am not going along.
I think that's what it is. I think if we take it back to that debate, I think that was why he didn't like the idea that he was being told do this. I think that's really what it is.
Yeah.
There's a stubbornness about Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
But it would have been much easier for him to just say, I denounce white supremacy.
Exactly.
You know why? Because he said it several times in the past. I'm going to play this clip.
Okay.
It's to condemn white supremacy, the neo-Nazis. He hasn't condemned a darn thing.
You've got David Duke just joined. A big
This was before he was president.
A problem.
Would you repudiate David Duke?
Sure.
David Duke and robocalls are out again. The white supremacist movement supporting you. Do you have any words for that?
Well, I disavow.
David Duke endorsed me? Okay. All right. I disavow. Okay?
When we looked at it and looked at the question, I disavowed David Duke. So I've disavowed David Duke all weekend long on Facebook, on Twitter, and obviously it's never enough.
So are you prepared right now to make a clear and unequivocal statement renouncing the support of all white supremacists?
Of course I am. Of course I am.
When Chris joined, we had a news conference, and they asked me the exact same question. I said, I disavow. I disavowed then. I disavowed today on ABC with George Stephanopoulos. I disavowed
This
again.
video is 3 minutes long.
David Duke is a bad person who I disavowed on numerous occasions over the years.
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I
at a
totally
debate.
disavow David Duke. Ultimately, he got to the Ku Klux Klan, which obviously I'm going to disavow.
I've rejected David Duke. I've rejected the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan.
David Duke is saying to his supporters and followers, vote for Donald Trump. White supremacists are saying, vote. Do you want those votes?
No, I don't want them, and I don't want him to say it.
And you want the supporters?
No, I don't want anything.
What do you think of white supremacists, by the way?
I don't like any group of hate.
David Duke announced his Senate candidacy,
Every interview.
claiming your agenda.
Are you ready before you ask the question?
Newt Gingrich said every Republican should repudiate this guy no matter what it takes.
And I do. Rebuked. Is that okay? Rebuked.
Rebuked.
Done.
Done.
Do you want white supremacists to vote for you?
No, I don't at all. Not at all.
His campaign is denouncing a show of support from the KKK's official newspaper, as in the Ku Klux Klan.
But then this clip goes on for 3 minutes. But it's funny because a week before that, he had actually declared the KKK.
Yeah, in his platinum plan.
Yeah, he had declared them a hate. Well, they had always been a hate group, right? But he declared something out.
He said something like Trump released this whole platinum plan for Black America, and one of the things in the plan was, I believe, the KKK and even also Antifa were going to be branded as terrorist groups.
Aha, terrorist group. Okay, so that was the plan.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my next question is, why do you think the media keeps throwing this question at him? Because I get it that it's easy for him to just say I disavow, but at some point you do understand how you start to wonder, why do you guys keep asking him the same thing over and over and over again? What do you think is driving it?
How do I answer this question? I think, really speaking, it's a number of things. I feel, in a sense, trying to associate the name Donald Trump with white supremacy in a way is a get out the votes tactic.
It's a smear tactic.
So, like, for example, if people assume that, like, Donald Trump and white supremacy go together, there's no way, large segments of the population are
will vote for him.
Will vote for him.
It'll make him radioactive.
Exactly.
If he's even if you don't even see him that way, and he's perceived that way,
exactly,
you don't want to be perceived as voting for someone that could even be remotely associated. That's what's going on here. This is, you see, and this is what I've been trying to get to here. This is a media generated thing, and that's why I keep trying to tell people that Donald Trump is a lot of things.
And
Donald Trump is a lot of things.
I would also,
but we knew Donald Trump long before he was president.
I would also say
this white supremacy thing was never a thing before he was president.
I would also say something. Even like actual.
You can move it. You can move it, right?
Yeah, that's true. Even like actual white supremacists themselves do say that Donald Trump is a joke.
Yeah, he was. Richard Spencer said that he's done with Trump.
Yeah, Richard Spencer is done with Trump and even claims that he's
supporting Biden. You see what I'm saying? And it's funny because when Donald Duke said that he supported Trump, all they ever did was ask Trump about Donald Duke. Mm-hmm. You will never see them ask Biden about freaking Richard Spencer. You won't.
Yeah.
And you see, these are little signs that you start understanding how in the tank the media is, and how they pretty much become a wing of the Democratic Party. They become a tool of the Democratic Party to get their message out. Let's not mistake this. Let's not mistake this. They've become a propaganda arm. The entire media, and I'm not just saying the cable news shows. Mm-hmm. No, this is deeper than that.
No, like
this is deeper than that. Now,
one thing I would also say is I was reading some commentary this week earlier by someone who writes a lot of commentary, and one thing he actually said is at the end of the day, one thing which people need to start really thinking deeply about in this country is the media in general needs to be reformed.
Oh yeah.
He said
long overdue.
Like serious media reform is needed. And in a sense, I would say people might not truly understand how much the media probably sways public opinion and probably even sways elections.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They don't only sway elections. They mobilize wars.
Yeah.
Let's keep it a buck.
And
they mobilize wars.
And
the media is a big part of why we were able to get into the Iraq War. They enabled that.
No, let me also say two real quick things. If people are really, really thinking hard and looking at things, it's the same media that's telling us right now that whenever you're a black male and you leave your house, you're probably gonna get cut down by a bullet within 10 seconds and things like that. And
it's so dangerous when they do that stuff.
And it's this same media
because
wait. Let me actually finish with this train of thought.
Yeah.
It's the same media that mobilized this country into the Iraq War.
Yep.
That alone should give people pause and say that what's the agenda of these people? What are these guys, really thinking about?
And the funny thing, right? I don't think members of the media necessarily know what is going on themselves. I in a lot of ways, I don't.
It's not surprising. Wait. It's not surprising, and I understand what you're about to say here.
You understand where I'm going, right?
And I would explain to you like the way things work naturally is number one, people in the media live, work, and move within what's much or less an echo chamber. So all their friends, all their associates, they share the same views with them and things like that. Like the truth about the matter, and it might sound somehow saying this is, And I guess this counts mainly for the big media companies because they're also, all this NBC and Fox companies around.
Yeah.
For the big media companies, many of them simply do not venture out of huge metropolitan areas.
They're mostly based in the coast.
Yes.
On the East Coast, West Coast. They're coastal elites.
Yeah, and here is the danger. If they only stay within those places, and do not get me wrong here, I have no problem, how they are and things like that. But like, if they do not have at least some level of connect with people outside their groups, with people outside their groups, there are things going on which in a way will shock them, and they'll be like, "What's happening to America? America is dying."
Yeah.
But even if, for example, one doesn't necessarily support Donald Trump, right?
Yes.
But number one, knows people who support Donald Trump, has been in places with people who support Donald Trump, has spoken with people who support Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Even though ultimately you might not agree with the guy or you might have issues with the guy,
Yeah.
some things will not necessarily shock you and you will understand some things. So which is another thing. And how it to be solved, I don't know.
We need to figure out how we're going to have a conversation after this election. We're going to need to figure it out.
But like, here's the problem. I'm not 100% sure that the conversation will happen. Because here is the reality, and I always say it. In the early 2000s, Western elites like in the UK, in the US, and things like that, spent tens of billions of dollars, if not trillions, trying to like export democracy to the Middle East, telling the world that democracy is very good. You people must become democratic. You people must become like the UK and the US. Well, here is the irony. Regardless of how you like the results, look at how, number one, they reacted to Brexit and Trump.
Yeah.
Because after all, Brexit and Trump were democratic events.
They were. And it was
And basically, many of the same people who were quote unquote promoting democracy in the early 2000s began saying things like, well, the populists make mistakes. Well, let's count. Like a very good example. Look at Tony Blair, for example.
Yes.
He went into the Iraq war with George Bush. And he was one of the champions of, the whole Iraq war. And when Brexit happened, one of the things he began saying was, well, democracy has its loopholes. Sometimes voters might make mistakes. We might have to cancel the whole election. Like, if they were really keeping to their so-called principles, they would agree. Which also leads me to the second thing I would say. So far, in many cycles of elections, politicians, representatives, and things like that haven't listened to what people are saying.
They haven't listened.
Either on the left or on the right. They have refused to listen or change course.
And I think that's how we ended up with Trump. I truly think that's how we ended up with Trump in the first place.
True.
Some people say this. Some people say there's a forgotten class of people in the United States. Some say it's the working class. If you're going to be more specific, some say it's the white, poor working class that have been neglected in this country. Others will hear that and they'll say, "Are you crazy? There's white privilege. There's no such thing. They have advantages." What's your take on that?
What's my take?
I can see the wheels turning in your head. You're trying to figure out how to break this down.
Without a doubt, there are like very serious problems within the white community which people used to traditionally associate with like minorities or black people. So, for example, if you read an author like J.D. Vance and Hugh Bailey Elegy, basically talking about the whites' working class social breakdown in Appalachia, using his own perspective.
And by Appalachia, please, can you help explain to people of who you're referring to?
Appalachia. Okay, like Appalachia is the region in and around the Appalachian Mountains, which run from, I believe, southern New York to northern Alabama.
Okay.
So basically, most of the South,
Yep.
most of the Atlantic seaboard and things like that. So like, if you look at things like, opioid abuse,
Yes.
family breakdown,
Yes.
jobs, gone away, and things like that. Those are very serious issues, and that's
and would you say any politician out there has been vocal about it?
no, not necessarily.
So do you think there is a case to be made that there is a forgotten class of people in this country?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
We'll come back because that's a deeper conversation.
And let me just also say a quick few things. About this whole issue of forgotten people. I would also say in many ways it also cuts across race.
It does.
But also it's a huge mistake to imagine that it is just, that white people have everything fall into their laps and white people do not have issues. Because, I mean, go to any Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump rally. It's majority white people who are there. And plus, another thing which brews a lot of tensions is, for example, imagine people from Appalachia.
Yes.
They're hearing, people on TV and things like that talking about their white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And it's someone who in their family, they have people who are overdosing on opioids, people who have died from opioids. His son was killed in Afghanistan, and they listen to that and they're like, what's going
Toby,
on?
What you just brought up, right,
Mm-hmm.
might be this forgotten class of people.
Mm-hmm.
This might be the central decider of this election.
Mm-hmm.
It could be.
Yeah, and it's
and my fear is that these people are going to see these things, and they're going to low-key re-elect Trump, and people are going to be wondering what the heck happened.
Look, it goes back to what we were saying a few minutes ago. People who report on many of these issues in the news, people who make all the polling data and things like that, in many ways, they are stuck within their bubble, which is another reason why, in many ways, polls have to be taken with a grain of salt. You need to ask, what's the sample size? Who was interviewed?
But then you think they've had decades and decades of this polling, so you think that they would have gotten it right?
No, but here's the thing: if people are used to doing one thing in one way, many times it's hard to get people all of a sudden to begin changing things.
Well, one thing we do know is that 2016 polls were skewed, right? I have a feeling that 2020 polls may be even more skewed than they were because of this idea of the shy Trump voter. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to this shy Trump voter? That
I mean, like basically the whole idea is there are cohorts of Trump voters out there who do not really want their views to be known and things like that because they fear social opprobrium. They fear their jobs being lost.
They fear one of the things that we talked about already about you voting for a man that's associated with white supremacy.
Exactly. And
these are things that people aren't paying attention to.
Exactly.
You hear some people and they sound so confident. They look at the polls. They're like, yes, Biden's up 8 points, 10 points. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you people, man, you people do not count your eggs before they hatch.
Let me give a quick story. And I think I might have said this in the last podcast.
Yeah.
I was listening once to a podcast by apparently he must live in small town Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And he said that he knows 100% that the small town he lives in is a majority Trump town. That he knows without a shadow of a doubt in him.
100%.
But he says if if you drive around the town,
you see Biden.
It's only Biden signs you see.
Wait, how does he know? Has he talked to everyone in that town?
By background, he's like a political philosopher and things like that. So like
interesting.
Basically, from his role, he'll know people and have insights.
So there's this, and I'm glad that we brought it up because there's this phenomenon of the shy Trump voter, disaffected Trump voters that are not being accounted for in the media. Here's the thing: I don't think the media is that stupid. They might be in their coastal elite bubbles, but they're not that stupid. Keep in mind, there's money behind these people too.
True.
So here's my theory. My theory is that the media knows about this. The media knows that there's a huge. I find it hard to believe that all of the media is completely.
Because look,
it's completely. Sorry.
Look, here is the main thing, and this thing is very logical. Why there will be a Trump, a shy Trump constituency. For example, let's think about this logically. Someone who goes into communities in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan.
Sorry about that, guys. You're gonna hear a lot of background noise, but I think I fixed it.
Someone who goes into communities in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and begins blasting free trade deals and says there must be tariffs on China and bring back the jobs. That person basically has struck resonance with everything that's going on there because basically they are like the center of this whole thing of deindustrialization, jobs going away, and basically that's what Trump is running on.
Yeah.
And the idea that all of a sudden since 2016 that constituency has went down is questionable.
But let me finish what I was saying. So I think the media knows of this phenomenon and they know it's a real threat.
Okay.
But they're not really going to speak to it. Here's why. I think there's also this phenomenon, right, and this is why I feel like the polls are bullshit. I don't have any evidence for this. But I feel like the way they present these polls to us, it's being done in a way to suppress.
I agree.
Voters. Have you ever heard of the phenomenon of when people tend to vote for who they think is going to win? People don't like being on the losing side. Ain't that some bullshit?
Very true.
Some people just don't like being on the
very
on the
psychological.
Losing side. It's psychological. And when heading into the election polls, you see Donald Trump is down by 15 points. There's a sense that I don't really need to have to go out of my house. The guys are already about to lose. There's that factor, right? Where it suppresses that vote. There's also the factor of some people that are really truly undecided. They don't really know what's going on. They're not as engaged in the news. And they just want to be on the side that won. So they go to the poll and they see that, well, I guess everyone's voting for this guy.
So
I'm going to just give him his vote.
Yeah.
I think that's playing into this to an extent. I find it hard to believe that the media is that stupid. These people have been doing this thing. Yes, I agree that they do have those blind sides. Yeah. They have those blind sides, and there's things that they don't see in middle America that they're more privy to and they also have social circles, and that's always going to be reflected in their reporting But I find it hard to believe that they are that stupid that they'll completely neglect that there's other factors at play here.
No, but here is also the second thing. If they begin acknowledging that, sure, that there is a huge Trump constituency out there that has grown since the year 2016.
Yes.
The next logical step is, okay, there's a huge constituency out there in the country. We will then need to begin asking, what's their problem? What are the issues?
Oh, and they're not trying to get into that. They're not trying to get into that.
That's the key.
They're not trying to get into those issues.
And in my own opinion, regardless of if people support Trump or not, it's in their best interest to actually sit down and look through those issues, if you support him or not.
Yes. I'm telling you, man, that's the best advice we can give you on this podcast. Do a little bit of research, because there's a lot of stuff that's not being reported on.
If you support Trump or not, because here is mine, and I feel that in the past, 4 years, almost 4 years at this point, time has been wasted that could have been spent actually coming up with even an alternative to Trump,
Yes.
which is coherent and which makes sense and which isn't just BS all over the place.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been done.
That's not been done.
And people can see that.
That's not been done. You know what's being done now?
What?
We're being given the old politicians that have been in power for years and years. That's what's being foisted upon us by the Democrats. The Democrats missed a huge opportunity, man.
No, but like
They missed a huge opportunity.
No, here is also the second thing.
How do they come back with Biden? We've seen him for the last 50 years.
No, here's the second thing. It's even bigger than the Democrats. It's also the Republicans. Because also, many Republicans and things like that, especially like the establishment kinds, are just trying to beat time for Trump to just leave the stage. So for example, I believe in the past 2 weeks, like 500 generals and national security people under Bush and people from the Bush White House have come out to support Biden.
Yeah.
And people should really ask, why exactly are they supporting Biden?
Makes you wonder.
Like,
it makes you wonder. A lot of Republicans have been coming out in support of Biden.
People need to ask what are the interests that bind both parties together?
Look, we're gonna let that marinate. We're gonna let that marinate. We never know. But let's get back to, because we kind of veered off there for a second. Let's get back to the election. So we was talking about Trump got COVID. We discussed that. Then what happened after that? The VP.
Yes, the VP debate between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris.
Let's talk about it. What was your first impression?
The VP debate, without a doubt, was more professional.
Yes.
Do
you think anyone won? Do you think there was a clear winner?
If anyone won, I watched the whole thing and I came out not necessarily thinking anyone won per se, but if I'm forced to say, did anyone win? Maybe Mike Pence.
And why would you say that?
I feel Pence was more clear. He had more of his facts. He knew what he was saying.
Man, that guy is smooth. That guy was smooth.
Yes.
That guy was smooth with it.
That one I'll give him.
And I think people weren't expecting much, because Pence gets lost in the Trump hysteria that no one even pays attention to him. But then
I don't think
people forget just how smooth. Because I've always known about.
I don't think Pence gets lost. Pence is okay. I use the word dangerous in a positive way.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in terms of the media coverage. He gets lost in the media, like, because Trump is sucking so much attention that we almost forget that he's there. He's just
that's true.
Yeah. So I think that's why people weren't really expecting that from him. I mean, the way he was coming at her at one point, I'm like, oh, this guy came. He wasn't like, and the fact that you were expecting that Pence would be the one to, like, just, the minute the moderator butts in, he will keep quiet. Pence kept going.
Yeah.
Pence kept going. He was like laser focused. He kept hitting at certain things. And I think what gave him the win for me is the fact that he forced out some things out of her, like the fracking thing, for instance. He forced Kamala Harris to come out and defend and pretty much embrace fracking. That's not going to play out with the progressive left.
Yes, that's true.
It's not.
I began seeing articles the next day from people from the progressive left saying that bad
it's
idea.
Not. It's not.
Embrace fracking, but here is also like the second thing. Like, in order for Biden to win, Biden must win a state like Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And fracking is a thing in Pennsylvania.
It is, and that's why they kept hammering at it. He kept bringing it back up. They would ask him a question, and he would just pivot right back
to the previous question.
To the previous question. I think he also got her on the part of the SCOTUS packing of the courts.
Yes, that's kind of true.
Yeah, he isn't it weird that they cannot answer that question? How can they answer the question whether they're going to pack the courts or not?
Like
is this really something that's on the table?
Like that's something very serious. Because
are you kidding me?
Like, let me actually tell you why they can't easily answer that question.
Why?
Sorry to use the terminology. Courts packing is a banana republic tactic.
It is.
Let's be very blunt. It's a banana republic
You're
tactic.
changing the rules.
Yeah.
You're switching up the rules. That's crazy to me.
Also, if the Democrats should decide to pack the courts, whenever the Republicans get there, they'll also pack it. So people will just keep expanding it, and
it'll be a mess.
Basically, they will destroy it. And Biden understands very well.
He knows
that if he commits to courts packing, that he probably won't survive it. Because there's a video clip from, I believe, yesterday, where Biden was somewhere. A journalist asked him about, are you going to do court packing? And Biden basically said the public doesn't deserve to know my answer. So basically, I guess in this next, is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks? How many weeks do we have?
Yeah.
About 2 weeks or so. Weeks. The main tactic of the whole Pence Trump team is going to be this whole court packing thing to try and extract an answer.
Yeah.
Because whichever answer they give, it's going to alienate someone.
It will.
If they should say, yes, we're going to court pack, it will alienate the conservatives, independents, moderates. If they say we're not going to court pack, it alienates the progressives.
The progressive left, they're going to look like, oh, well, so I guess you guys are just going to let this nomination go through and give the conservatives a 6-3 majority.
Yeah.
And at that point, the left is going to look like, what's the point of you guys?
Exactly.
They're going to look like, you know what I'm saying? And people know, like you'd mentioned in the last episode, the courts, that's where a lot of change is taking place. Yeah. That's where a lot of change is affecting people.
Yeah.
People know.
I mean, I know, and here has always been my own, okay, not always, but it has all of a sudden developed. My own, what they call it, position on court packing.
Yeah.
They actually should go ahead and do it.
Yeah, you said so. You said you want to go ahead and do it so that it will expose exactly what
the cover of the whole system will be blown open to everyone.
So let's go back to the debate. I do want to highlight some things that Harris did very well. She's a prosecutor, obviously. She was a former prosecutor. So she put him on his heels a few times too.
Absolutely.
She put him on his heels with do you remember what it was there was something that she had put him on his heels on. I can't remember now. But she was very, very forceful in her approach. I didn't mind it. There's the whole thing about female candidates and how people tend to pick on their gestures. And that came up, obviously. And it's funny because the Biden-Harris campaign, right after the debate, they're already putting out, floaters out there about how, well, she's a black woman and she's also very cautious of how she wants to come across. And obviously, as a black woman, she has to hold back a little bit. I hate it. I hate it so much whenever we inject this racial things into things. But it is politics, so we can't do without it at this point. Some people pointed out the fact that she was a little snarky at times.
True. And
that she was a little sarcastic and she was always giving faces. I didn't really have any trouble with it. I felt like she got flustered, but it had nothing to do with her expressions. I see her as she's a black woman. I'm used to. I have a wife. You know what I'm saying? I know how my wife looks at me when she's getting snarky. So for me, stuff like that, doesn't bother me.
You what's the word? You understand the cues.
I understand the cues. It doesn't bother me. That's just how black women tend to be very expressive sometimes. So I understand why some people might have had a problem with those things being picked on. But I'm not going to belabor that. I think she did it. She held her own.
Yeah.
I think she held her own. Also.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
I think she held her own. I just think the part was towards the end when Pence started to land some blows and started to kind of push her on some things where it was like you could tell she didn't really have the answers for, and it was like that fracking stuff.
Yeah.
It was like the other stuff that had to do with the packing of the courts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was just going at it, man. And then the final thing about the debate was the fly, of course. We got to talk about the fly. That fly was not budging, man. 3 minutes.
I would confess I haven't even paid attention to the whole fly thing.
So you haven't?
Because that's just how inconsequential I think the whole.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But in this day and age of politics, right? There's a meme factor that comes with politics too.
Absolutely.
If you really want to get attention, there has to be something memeable about the moment.
Absolutely.
The fly was.
Absolutely.
The fly was. And I think that's just the stage we're in with social media. There has to be that element that people can laugh at.
Yep.
So I thought it was interesting. That fly wasn't budging, Sha. That fly was like
3 minutes straight.
I'm like, what the heck? So yeah, I thought that was interesting.